An argument amongst those who are anti-immigration, especially when it comes to Black and brown people, is that they will take our jobs, lower wages, and burden us with more poor people. If you're one of those people, then I've got news for you. I'm Brittany Noble, and this is the Open Source TV. Back in a minute. Foreign-born population in St. Louis is booming. In fact, it's growing at a faster pace than most other U.S. cities. President and CEO Ariel Benson is my guest today. He's here to explain why St. Louis is so attractive to immigrants. A native of Cameroon, Mr. Obenson is president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. Previously, he was the founder and CEO of Transformity. Ari has served as Secretary General of Junior Chamber International. In addition, he's a lawyer, a member of the Cameroon Bar Association, an inspiring public speaker, and author of Bridging the Opportunity Gap. Welcome to Open Source TV. I want you to tell me a little bit about your story. Can you tell me why you decided to immigrate here?
Well, I came to St. Louis because I came to work for an international organization called Junior Chamber International that, of all places, its headquarters, its world headquarters is found in Chesterfield, Missouri. And I was actually hired by this organization in Miami, warm Florida, Miami, which looked a little bit like my home country, Cameroon. And 3 months into the job, the organization said, we're moving to St. Louis, Missouri, Chesterfield, Missouri. And yes. I said, where is that? So that's how I ended up working here in Chesterfield, Missouri for about 17 years with Junior Chamber International. And
I know when you got here and you first started working, the snow, that was a whole situation, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So the first day I got to St. Louis, it was sometime in April, towards the end of April. And it was my understanding that, the end of April is the end of spring and everything is going to be warm. But when I got here, I recall driving from the airport to Chesterfield, where my organization was, and we went into the office, and I was getting some orientation. Okay. And by the time we came out, it had snowed. And I got into the parking lot, and I was looking at the car, and I had no idea what to do. And it was a Good Samaritan, and it always bothers me that I've never really known who that person was, who came to me and said, oh, you need to brush it off. And I said, brush the snow off? He said, yes. And he showed me in every car there is usually a brush in the trunk. You take that out and brush it up. And then he said, you have to dress warm, right? And this gentleman actually asked me to follow him.
Wow.
And he drove me to a Walmart. And it helped me get gloves and
oh, wow.
Yep.
And that is incredible.
Yeah, that was my first experience with a St. Louis person that actually was very helpful to me at a time of need.
And somebody else helped you with your car too. Wasn't it very difficult to get your car when you first came?
Yeah, when immigrants come here, when you come from another country, you don't have a credit history. And so if you have to buy a car, you either pay for it cash or you take, so I ended up buying a car from Lufus Toyota at a 23% interest rate. And it was only after 6 months that I ran into a lady who is now with Enterprise Bank that actually did say, well, we're going to take a chance on you, and they reduced my interest rate from 27% to 6% interest rate. And this is the same with actually trying to rent a building, because when I moved here, I stayed in a hotel for a while with my company, but after a period of time, I had to get an apartment. But how could I get an apartment without rental history, without credit history, without, so somebody had to, a colleague of mine took a chance on me and co-signed for me to have an apartment. My coming to America is very, very much different from most immigrants that come here, through very unfortunate circumstances. But the challenges of immigrants is, some of these things may look trivial, but are really significant in how you are able to start here in America. Paying a 23% interest rate on a car for a 6-month period is almost like paying double the price of the car over a 5-year period.
Well, We will continue talking about this and other problems that immigrants are facing here when they're moving, and we will be back right in a minute. Stay with us.
I took off running upstairs to the room, opened the door, and found Megan hanging in her closet. I screamed to him. He came upstairs. We called 911. He did get Megan down and started CPR. The paramedics arrived, and they did get her heart started and to breathe again, but she was in a coma. Everything was really shutting down. We weren't going to put her on life support. I couldn't do that to her. And Megan passed away on October 17th of 2006.
Welcome back. We're at the International Institute of St. Louis. Mr. Obenson, thank you so much for joining us. I want you to tell us more about what you guys do here.
Well, the International Institute has for over a century played a significant role in welcoming immigrants to St. Louis. As far back as 1919, after the World War, when a lot of people moved into St. Louis from Eastern Europe, there was something happening here in the city is that lots of men had lost their lives in the war, right? And so we needed to fill the workforce. And because we had many women who had come from Europe, they were available to work, but they couldn't speak English, so they couldn't integrate the workforce. The International Institute started out by teaching these women English so that they could integrate the workforce.
Wow.
And over the years, it has blossomed into this organization that prepares the pathway for immigrants when they arrive here so that they can be successful within the community. It also, over the years, realized that the more you integrate immigrants in the community, the more there are challenges that come. And those challenges arise normally everywhere, that when people move into a community, it creates friction within the community. And our job is also not just integrating the immigrants, but helping the community understand the immigrant population and ensure that there's real integration and positioning this community as one that is more welcoming, more inclusive for people who come here so that they can stay here.
How do you work with the city and the state to make that happen?
So because the International Institute is in St. Louis, we contract with the federal government to help resettle immigrants within this community. Okay. So each year, the federal government makes what they call a presidential determination on the number of refugees that they can bring into the country. And based on that, they contract out with resettlement agencies like the International Institute that's in this community and in this city. And based on that, we get federal funding that helps support the absorption or integration of the immigrant or refugee population into this community. And that's the link that we have.
Wow. I know that St. Louis is one of the top 3 locations to come to. Why is that the case?
Well, because of all the things that we have been doing as a community, the work that the International Institute has done, the infrastructure that we have built over the years makes it more attractive. But also, beyond the International Institute, St. Louis has these universities that are attracting people from all over the world to come here. And we are working in close collaboration with all of these stakeholders. We also not only have universities, but if you look at the corporations that are here, that attract people to come and work from all over the world, from the Boeings of the world, the Emersons, all of these corporations, City Mortgage, MasterCard, they all attract foreigners to come and work here. And once they're here, we play a role in ensuring that those foreigners feel comfortable, feel included as part of this community.
Any idea of just how many immigrants we have maybe in this community and where they're from?
Well, what we know is that at least from the last time I looked at, if we look at in the city of St. Louis in itself, about 7% of the workforce in the city are foreign born. So it's a significant and growing population.
Okay. Amazing. And who is paying for the programs that are right here in this building?
Several programs. We have about 22 federally funded programs that we provide here in the building. But we also have a significant amount of our support that comes from the community. I say without the community, we cannot be successful in the work that we do. So we have individuals, we have corporations, we have local foundations that are providing support to us. And then the federal government also provides support.
Great work that you guys are doing here. We'll be back right after the break. Stay with us.
I'll be honest, Will, that's a pretty cutthroat industry. Like, I don't know what drew you to the business.
Well, actually, my great-great-great-grandfather was a pretty famous author at one point.
Ho, the name doesn't ring a bell. Did he use a pseudonym or something?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Well, I mean, from what I'm reading here on your resume, I think you'd be a perfect fit here at Frost Publishing.
Let's talk about the southern border and why it's such a dividing topic. If the southern border only accounts for 20% of the immigration problem, tell me how the 80% are staying in this country and maybe being overlooked.
Yeah, I think it's disadvantageous for us to have an immigration policy that is based on looking at only half the pie. I think for us to have good policy, we have to look at the whole picture. And whilst I know it is dramatic for people when they see on televisions, thousands of people walking towards the United States and our southern border, for people to think that, because that's dramatic, that defines the challenge that we have in our immigration policy. But what they overlook in the process is the thousands more people that fly in every day into this country and overstay their visas. And if 2,000 people coming through the southern border is a big immigration challenge, then 8,000 people flying into their country is an even bigger challenge. And so in addressing that, we need to address the big question. It's not the southern border that's our immigration problem. If immigration in itself is a problem, because I don't necessarily think that immigration is a problem, it has actually led us to who we are as America. This country has been one that has been built by people coming from different parts of the world to make it what it is. And so immigration is not the problem. It is the policy of immigration that becomes a problem.
And when you get here, how difficult is it to find a home, to get set up, to find a job?
It's even more compounded when you come here in the circumstances that most of the people that we serve come here, uprooted from their homes to arrive here with nothing but the clothes on their back, and then beginning from there, sometimes not being able to speak the language. So you're starting everything from scratch. Beginning with housing, which is the most important thing. You need to have shelter to begin to survive. And the biggest challenge that we have in terms of housing, especially in this process, is that even in terms of housing, you need to have a rental history. You need to be able to do a background check on you for you to be able to get a house. But if you have not been in our system, you can't even do a background check. If you don't have a rental history, you can't get an apartment. And if you don't have a credit history, you can't get an apartment. So the first thing is, how do you even get people into housing? So we at the International Institute have been able to work with the local community landlords to be able to find ways in which we could bridge that gap and create opportunities for people to get housing. And then beyond just getting a house is that once you have shelter, there are other things that you need. You need to put food on the table. So we work to try to assess people's skills and work with local employers to integrate this, the people who arrive here into the workforce. If there are children in the family, we want to ensure that those children become successful. So we work with the St. Louis Public School District to try to integrate them into the school and help them catch up because they would be coming from a disadvantaged position. So we do all of these things. We actually provide really a comprehensive support to them. So because if you don't speak English, we provide English language services for you. We also do provide financial literacy classes, so for people to be able to understand the economy and how they can save and build and grow within this. Credit is something that we have to work on, and so we have credit building services that teaches people how to establish their credit. So I always say more than resettlement, because people think about the work that we do from resettlement, just people, it's really helping people succeed. If immigrants that come here succeed, it is the community that succeeds, because they become employers, they're consumers, they're taxpayers, they're entrepreneurs, and they bring their culture to the community, and all of that is what's going to continue to lift this community. It's what has always lifted this community, and it's what will continue to lift this community.
Absolutely. Are you able to talk about the legal process for immigration?
Well, there are several processes that are involved depending on how and where the individual comes from.
Okay.
So here at the International Institute, we serve immigrants and refugees. So in the immigrant category, you have refugees, and refugees are people who are fleeing a conflict from their country and have escaped to a third country, and through bilateral cooperation, because the U.S. is a part of this international treaty, when you flee to a third country, they usually stay in refugee camps. And after a period of time, there are about 13 countries in the world that accept those refugees. And so when you come here as a refugee, upon arrival, because the U.S. agreed to this, you have access to the legal documents that are needed for you to be able to be employed. So employment authorization, a social security number, all of that, on arrival. And in that process, once you arrive, we, the International Institute, really we have some funding that helps you within 90 days to be able to get up to speed with your rents, your work, and all of that. So that's for refugees. Okay. There are also people who flee prosecution from their countries and come to the United States. And once they're in the United States, they apply for something called asylum. And asylum is granted to people who have a well-founded fear that if they return to their country of origin, they are going to be prosecuted. Now, those people come, they apply, there is a process. It takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years for them to be able to get their paperwork that allows them to be able to live here as legal residents in the United States. Once you apply, you are granted a temporary stay and a temporary employment authorization until such a time when you are granted your full stay. And of course, there are other people who come here as students. They have a visa for the period of time that they're here as students. When they complete their education, they can either be employed here by a company here, and they change their status to become legal permanent residents in the United States. And there are several other ways in which people come here. So as I mentioned, companies like Boeing and Citigroup that hire people, that bring them here with work visas. So when they come here, they have work visas and they can work here. And after a period of time, they could become permanent residents.
And how long does that whole process take?
It is
to become a permanent resident.
So under normal circumstances, if you're a refugee, after 1 year of arrival, you become a permanent resident. If you are an asylee, after a 5-year period, you become a permanent resident. If you came here with a work visa, you have to, after 5 years, you become a legal permanent resident. That's under normal circumstances, right? But those circumstances change, especially now. In the context of COVID, everything is backlogged, and so we're seeing a lot more delays. in the context of the last administration, the last 4 years, we saw even more delays just because the philosophy of the last administration was not encouraging immigration into the United States. So sometimes it could be a really long process where you see people who have lived here 11, 15, 20 years still struggling to get their legal permanent residence. It's complex sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're watching the Open Source TV, and we will be back in a minute. Stay with us.
You know, Jesus was the first gang member. Jesus was the first blood. And he had 12 disciples, right? But they were gangster disciples. That's where GDs come from. You know? And this all happened in BC, before Crips.
Welcome back. Let's talk about diversity in St. Louis. Just how diverse has our population become now?
St. Louis, amazingly, is a very, very diverse community. It is not obvious when you look at it, but there are people from at least 94. There are about 94 different communities from around the world that are living in St. Louis. It's a very, very diverse community, and it's even becoming more diverse in the sense that we are currently working on this massive Afghan arrival that will continue to make St. Louis even more diverse. And a few years back, we saw the arrival, in the 90s, we saw the arrival of the Bosnians in great numbers that continue to make this community more and more diverse. We are seeing a significant increase in the number of the Indian population, which many people do not realize, but the fastest growing population now in this community is the Indian population. We also have the Korean population that is growing significantly.
Wow.
It's a very diverse community.
Would you say that the immigration program has improved our community?
I would say that because this community is struggling to be welcoming, I think there is the desire of the community stakeholders to make St. Louis more attractive for immigrants to come here. And I think that the more we do that, the more we're going to, I think we have been very successful. I really want to highlight this, that when Kabul collapsed, when the government in Kabul collapsed, and we knew then that there would be Afghans coming into St. Louis. Since then, we have seen an unprecedented outpour of support from the community in welcoming the Afghans here. And I know too often we talk about what is wrong with St. Louis, that so much that we don't talk about what is right. But what I've seen right with this community has been just how we have come together as a community, how we have mobilized resources, how we've worked across with 80 different organizations, the city and businesses, to prepare and welcome the Afghans into this community. I think it's been a tremendous success.
Overall, would you say that a lot of people that come into this community feel welcome, or maybe not so much?
Well, I would not necessarily say that they feel welcome, because that's the one thing that every time I ask people, they start by saying, at first I didn't feel welcome, at first I didn't feel included, but as I started building relationships, I felt, and that's what we are trying to correct. We're trying to make sure that upon arrival in the city from airport, you feel like the community welcomes you. You feel like you can find your place here. And that's incumbent on us to do. That's the role too that we play here at the International Institute. So people can be able, we're pairing Afghan families with the community so that there is that fast integration and so that they feel like this community is ready for them.
Would you say that the relocation program has been a success, or is there anything we can do to make it more successful?
There's always room for improvement. I think we've done remarkably well in recognizing what our shortcomings are and working with other organizations to close that gap. I think what the story out of this has been our ability to take ourselves out of the equation and focus on what the outcome will be. And we've done that by bringing all organizations that have the interest in supporting the Afghans to play their part. And hopefully, when we look back at this 5 years from now, we would say we succeeded, not as the International Institute, but as the St. Louis community.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back, Mr. Obenson. Thank you so much. You have provided great information for us. And let us not forget that the founding fathers were immigrants who waged war on the indigenous people and brought Africans here in chains. Immigration is the fabric of this country. Diversity is what makes it so vibrant and beautiful. At the Open Source, we welcome those who don't look like us. Difference brings new experiences. I'm your host, Brittany Noble. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll see you again real soon.